Good, what the hell is it? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Pop Go the Writers. I'm Dan.
I'm Paul.
That's Paul. And we've been gone for a little while.
Yeah.
You might have missed us. You might not have. You probably didn't, but we understand.
Yeah. I don't miss me when I'm gone. I think most people call that sleep, but anyway.
That reminds me of the line from Matchbox 20. Hey, it's me, but I can't get myself to go away.
Yep, well.
Yeah. All right, folks. So it is March 20th.
20th. Happy spring, vernal equinox, everyone. Welcome to springtime.
Yes, springtime for Hitler and Germany.
Wow. I'm sorry that you've descended to my level during. I mean, Mel Brooks, positive.
Yes.
Us singing? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I ever tell you about the weird event at San Diego Con one year? This was 1999. We were in an aisle with Hurricane Comics across from us. Don McGregor and Dean Zachary next to them.
Yeah.
CrossGen in their first ever booth was at the end cap to our left. Don Brown, who did the Little Red Hot, was there. So we had this really interesting row.
Yeah.
And for some time, two different weird things happened. Just suddenly the aisle would be empty.
Yeah.
It would be a very busy convention, and we'd see at either end people just going back, nobody in the center. So at one point I stood up and went, "There's no waiting on aisle 47. No wait," or whatever the number of the aisle was.
Yeah.
And everybody, we could see them at the end of the aisle stop, turn, realize there was an empty aisle, and suddenly it filled.
It's like after the Israelites stepped out of the Red Sea and in Ten Commandments.
Yep. The other thing when that happened the second time, I was sitting there with an artist friend of mine, Jason Jewett. Jason has done all the covers for my Lucius Fogg novels. But we're sitting there, and again, it's dead. So I just bust into the Righteous Brothers. You never close your eyes. And I go, and Jason joins in. And then Don across the aisle joins in. And everybody just kind of, we get this little chorus going. And then again, people just kind of start wandering down the road going, why is there singing?
Yeah. Especially appropriate, though, because the diner where they filmed a bunch of scenes in Top Gun
was just down the street.
It's right down the street.
Yep. Yeah, the Kansas City Barbecue.
That's it.
Yep, that's where they filmed all the restaurant scenes with the Goodness Gracious, Great Balls of Fire song.
Yep.
What's the name of the singer for that?
That's Jerry Lee Lewis, isn't it?
Thank you. I knew there was a 3-name thing, but I couldn't. I kept wanting to go Gary and the Playboys, which is very different.
Very, very different. But, we'll forgive you, Dan.
Isn't Gary and the Playboys lead singer son of Jerry Lewis?
I don't know.
I think it is.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've ever heard that, but
Jeff Altman used to do a comedy routine about Gary and the Playboys, and he talked about how Gary was the son of Jerry Lewis, and he says, wouldn't it be great if in the middle of a song he turned into his dad? Well, this diamond ring doesn't.
Glavin.
Yeah,
Lady, yeah. I turned right all the way into Professor Frank.
All right, folks. We're going to give you a little update on why we disappeared. And by we, it's pretty much me. Paul was ready to go 2 of the 3 days. Paul takes his first Sunday of the month off to play Dungeons and Dragons. But I've been dealing with just a wee bit of a medical issue, and I will tell you what it is. Um, I got I'm a big guy. I'm diabetic. I had some issues with my calves where I actually had some skin break open and get infected. So for the first couple weeks, I was on huge amounts of antibiotics. And even though we were addressing that, it really didn't start addressing the actual wounds. So now I'm addressing that, and I'm still taking some antibiotics because there's still a small level infection, but the legs are definitely improving. So that's where I've been. The original doses of antibiotics, I was taking both pills and injections, and they were just kicking my ass.
And that'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah. That and the fact is that I'm supposed to keep my feet up as much as possible. So if I'm going to do an hour or 2 hours, then I need to go and keep them up for an equal amount of time or more. So, needless to say, I have not gotten to go see the Batman, being a 3 hour frickin' movie, as much as I want to see it.
Wait, you didn't see the Batman because you couldn't put your feet up? Like, I got a theater right over here, and every seat in the place you can raise it up electronically.
I'm 6'6".
I know these are big chairs. Like when I'm sitting in it, I can't even actually sit all that comfortably in it with the legs down because it pushes on the back below my knees.
Mm,
Because yeah. Anyway, but it'd be a long trip for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've never
So
actually put the seat up. Never even
yeah.
thought about it before. I
Yeah,
hate
these are like lounge things, so it might
Yeah,
not have
no,
been over your head, but or over your heart level, but it's close.
I'll have to keep that in mind. I actually want to try to get over and see it sometime this week. I have listened to well, they call it a prequel novel, but it's barely a novel because it's only about 2 hours and 20 minutes of actual audible.
Mm.
So that's not much.
Man, I'm very disappointed both because you weren't able to see it and because I have so many good what I think are so many good slams here. Uh I'm fine. I'm going to give away this much.
Okay.
I'm the person who does not like this movie. I did not expect to like it. I went in though trying to have an open mind about it,
Mhm.
and yipes.
I
But what?
expect I expect you didn't like it, and this is just a guess. I expect you didn't like it for the same reason you had an issue with Sharon Carter being the power broker.
Well, that wasn't really Sharon Carter. That was a Skrull, which we'll find out in Secret Invasion.
I think you have a certain
Right, Steve? Right.
yeah, you have a certain love for Batman, and this is not that Batman.
Or one might argue any Batman, but yeah, I mean it's not the kind of thing I like.
Mhm.
Um, it's like people say, "Oh, it's noir." No, it's not. It's serial killer thriller,
Yeah, it's
and
Seven.
that's yeah, and that's not noir.
No,
They kept saying, "Oh, it's noir." It's like, no, not really. I've seen some good neo noir, and this ain't it.
yeah.
But
Uh,
anyway, I'm
everything.
going to stop now because we may talk about it after you get a chance to see it.
Oh yeah, yeah. If I can get over this week, I may go tomorrow, or I may go on Friday.
Yeah,
Oh no, I may go over at some point this week.
yeah.
But what I have been doing is two things.
Okay.
I have been on a Poirot kick like you wouldn't believe. I started watching the David Suchet,
Suchet.
David Suchet
It's like
version.
touche, but with Sue.
Yes, and they're all available on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I started watching the big movies. You know, it's like I actually went in to see what their version of Evil or Death on the Nile
Death
was.
on the Nile. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just kind of kept watching and kept watching. And finally, I just went back to the beginning and started watching the seasons. And I'm currently on season 9 of 13 seasons?
Wow. I did not realize it had gone that long.
Well, he did the character for like 28 years, but they would take these breaks and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
back and do like, oh, here's 6 movies or 3 movies.
Yeah.
And then there were the 1-hour episode seasons that had like 10 or 12. So there's a lot. So far, where I'm at, I've had 3 different Doctor Who's pop up.
Yeah.
Peter Capaldi, very young. Christopher Eccleston, very young.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul McGann, not as young, but still youngish. Yeah. And in all of them, they were not the killer, and they got the girl. So it's like a consistency. I think if you have an ex-doctor on the show, they're going to get the girl, and they can kill anybody.
They have to review their their filmography before they get to be Doctor Who. I found this one where you don't get the girl. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, Paul McGann, of course, was done after he was the Doctor, but the other 2 were early. So all 3 of them
would have been. Yeah, I think that would have been right after, very soon after Capaldi did Local Hero.
Actually, it might have been before. This was.
I don't know. I felt like I felt like I looked at his IMDb one time and he didn't have anything major before, but it might have been. It might have been.
So I saw something that the actors that got their start.
Yeah.
On Poirot, and he was listed along with
okay.
Jolie Fisher.
Yeah.
Yeah, and God, there's a bunch of them.
Which is so weird to me because I always think of Jolie Fisher. I think the first thing I saw her in was Ellen, the TV show, not the sitcom, not the talk show, and she's Carrie Fisher's half sister. So it always throws me off when I see her in like these British things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know Michael Fassbender pops up in one of these. I haven't seen him yet, but Michael Fassbender, Aidan Gillian from Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is so. It is fun. Kind of anytime you watch a British show. You're like, and there, yep, okay. That one I know from here. That one I know from here. Yep. I ran into that. Actually, I run into that with Canadian shows as well. Well, I think I mentioned that in Reacher, which doesn't seem like it's a Canadian show, but I think was shot up there. And it's like, boom, boom, boom. Here's all these people I've seen in other Canadian shows.
Yeah.
Shot in Canada.
Yep. Like Kristen Kruk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I just loved when she was like, somebody save me.
We're going to go back on a 3-week hiatus, folks.
He's going to figure out a way to slowly dismember me and then find somebody else to take my place.
Yes, I've been watching a lot of murder mysteries lately. I've gotten some ideas. But the other thing that I caught, and of course, having seen The Death on the Nile recently with Brana and rewatched Murder on the Orient Express, but it popped back in my head that Amazon Prime had done a Poirot mystery not that long ago.
Oh,
John Malkovich.
Right.
Yes. So night before last, I decided I'm going to step away from Suchet. I'm going to sashay from Suchet.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you. And watch this Malkovich thing. And it's set up as a 3-episode series.
Yeah.
So it's 3 hours. And they're doing the ABC murders. Now, I've read the ABC murders when I was younger. And I recently watched the David Suchet version. So I kind of knew what the mystery was, but I thought, Let's see what they do with it.
Yep.
It is by far the biggest piece of crap I have seen in a very long time.
Well, you know why it was? Because
Why?
the people climbing into Malkovich's head periodically, and that's why his performance was not steady.
It turns out John Cusack does a horrible Poirot.
See, just not surprising.
So, the
Really,
ABC,
that bad, huh?
let me tell you why.
Okay.
The ABC Murders takes place about halfway through Poirot's career.
Okay.
In the book, he's assisted by Colonel Hastings, who is with him in the majority of his cases.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of his Watson.
Yeah.
And Colonel Hastings, Chief Inspector Japp.
Yeah.
Who is the what's the Lestrade?
Kind of Lestrade.
He's kind of Lestrade, though he's much more open to working with Poirot. I mean, there's a friendship there. Yeah, it's closer to what we got in the Sherlock series than it is in the Jeremy Brett series.
Yeah, yeah.
So the first thing they do in the ABC Murders is Poirot is retired. So he's old, he's out of it. Well, you know what? Let me go ahead and do this real quick, just in case anybody decides they want to see it.
Yes. A 100-year-old book, or probably not quite that, but still.
No, she wrote them in the 30s, so but close, getting really close.
Really.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I got to go check in on old folks' home.
Wait till you hear the other thing I've been doing lately. So they move it to the end of his career, and he's kind of disgraced, is what we find out, is that somebody sends him a letter basically saying they're going to commit a murder. And they sign it ABC. Well, he takes it to the police, to Chief Inspector Japp, and Japp isn't there anymore. And his replacement won't see him, a guy named Lieutenant Crome. Well, we go to see Japp, who's now retired and gardening, and is played by Kevin McNally.
Okay.
You'll recognize him if you saw him. And he explains that, well, you know, he got his retirement, he was done, all this stuff, but the replacement, Lieutenant Crome's a good guy, and while he's trying to console Poirot, since he got ignored by the police, he has a heart attack and dies.
Oops.
Yeah. So now they've taken away Hastings and Japp, two of the characters from the book.
Right.
And they've made Poirot old and out of it.
Well, hard to not do that if you're going to cast Malkovich.
True. The second thing they do is he has a goatee.
Right.
No mustache. No unique mustache. Just a perfectly manicured goatee. So the fact that Poirot's big thing is the mustache.
Right.
They don't bother. And maybe they looked at Kenneth Branagh, who Murder on the Orient Express came out just before it, and went, no, he went so big, we need to ignore the mustache altogether. You know, because Branagh's mustache was spectacular.
It was a thing of beauty.
It was. It needed its own billing and should get its own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yeah.
So, no mustache. So, no signature mustache. Malkovich is barely trying to do an accent. He occasionally says a French word. That's it. No Belgian accent. And then we find out that Jap was actually forced off out of the police because it came to light that Poirot had not been a police officer in Belgium, as he had said, and nobody could figure out who he really was or what he was. So that suddenly, because Jap had basically vouched for him, it cost him his career. I don't know why they decided to make this part of the story, as it doesn't matter to the actual mystery, and it really doesn't matter to the story they tell.
So you're saying they take a classic character and they twist the movie all around, so it's not a very good representation of that character.
I see where you're going.
What? No, I was just trying to get the clear message out of what you were saying.
So the actual murder mystery that they've taken from the book
is
pretty straightforward. What they've done is slaughtered the character, and then they added all this other subcontext to the murder mystery. There's this whole sexual weirdness going on. There's a prostitute that's introduced, played by the same woman who plays Yennefer in The Witcher.
Oh, really?
Yes.
God, I wish I could remember her name. She's
it
good.
Begins with an A.
Yeah.
But and then also one of the other guys in it, the suspect, is also from The Witcher.
Anya Chalotra.
Yes.
So.
Yes, and the guy that she in season 2 escapes with, who was hunting Ciri in the first one, and then she escaped. That's the suspect in this series. So 2 people from The Witcher.
Yeah.
But the guy that got to play Lieutenant Crone, he looks much younger than he probably is.
Mm-hmm.
He has this bad, obnoxious mustache. Classic cop mustache. But he looks like he's wearing his parents' suit because it doesn't look like it fits him.
Okay.
And it's played by Rupert Grint. So you're asking me to take John Malkovich as Poirot, who's not doing an accent. He doesn't have a telltale mustache. And just none of his nothing about it says Poirot. And then you give me Ron frickin' Weasley as a cop.
Explainus mysterioso.
It was so bad.
Wow.
But I had to watch it because I
wish you'd given me a heads up. I would have struggled through this one.
I'm trying to save you, man.
I may still go back and watch it because it sounds so awful.
It is.
And when I say awful, I mean OFFAL.
I was so stunned at how bad it was, I couldn't turn it off. I watched all 3 episodes because I had to see, are they going to change the story, like the actual murder mystery? Because they've changed the characters and everything else around it. But are they going to change the story so that these other changes make sense of why they did it? Were they going for something? No.
No.
And then we do get the answer of who Poirot was. But again,
was he a can dancer?
No. Do you want to know? Or do you want to save it in case you watch it?
No, you're right. I should save it to watch it on, and then if we get an episode next week, you can get the full glory of my meltdown when I realized.
Please. I would love to get someone else's opinion.
Custodian at the French police, or the Belgian police, rather.
Now, I posted this on Facebook that it was that bad.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people responded, all of whom either were thanking me for telling them how bad it was because they thought about watching it, or completely agreed with me. Except one person who disagreed that it's the worst adaptation of Agatha Christie ever.
Okay, well, that's
By linking to a 1960s movie, also the ABC Murders, starring Tony Randall as Poirot.
well, he's certainly got the air down, but
There's a clip on YouTube of it, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It's more Inspector Clouseau than it is.
wow.
It's like he's trying to be Peter Sellers as Poirot. It is so bad.
All right. Well,
Yes. And the scary thing is, of all the people, for it to be Tony Randall, because around that same time, he was dating my grandmother.
huh?
My grandma dated Tony Randall for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now there are some family stories that you get, and you're like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It just kind of passed down and stuff like that. Every member of my family knows this story.
Mm-hmm.
All of my uncles and aunts all went, it would come up and they're like, oh yeah, grandma, Granny dated Tony Randall for a while.
Yeah. Hey. Well, you've worked with Gene Simmons. That's like the same thing. You know famous people too, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. I was on Dexter, so yeah.
Yeah.
I hung out with Michael C. Hall for a day.
But you didn't work very hard on that, though.
No,
I mean, you just kind of laid there.
Yeah. Though I did give my my comic book expertise on what books they could put under my head and not be that valuable.
Yeah. Well, it's good. It's good that a TV prop team is conscious of that kind of thing.
Yeah, the director was like, "Can we prop his head up on maybe some comics or something?" And do we know which ones aren't that expensive? I looked up and I saw a couple of the black and white reprint essentials. And It was like, so I went, that one. It's a cheap reprint. And they're like, damn.
Oh, and it's nice and thick. It'll give your head a little. Yeah.
So they grabbed a couple of the black and white reprints and lifted my head up.
Oh. And that's that's no easy feat. You got a big noggin. That's what I'm saying.
I do. I definitely do. So yeah. Now the other thing I've been doing lately,
All right.
and you were talking about old. I've been crocheting.
Oh, that's right. I remember you took that up a few weeks back. And that's been going all right. You started a scarf or something, didn't you?
A temperature blanket.
A temperature blanket. Okay.
Yes, a temperature blanket, and then basically you can either pick the year you're in or any important year to you, and you just look back at history and see what the temperature was for each day, and you color code it like, oh, the 50s is this color, if it's 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've 6 months in, so I'm halfway through that blanket. And then something came up, another reason to make a blanket. So I've put that one aside as of last Sunday at this time,
Mm-hmm.
and started a new blanket as a gift. And I'm already halfway through that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it's easier if you're not, sitting there doing the, Yeah, wait, which day is this? Oh, I gotta figure out. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I picked self-striping yarn, which I didn't know was a thing.
I did not either.
But basic,
Self-striping.
yeah, basically what it is that it starts off one color and then it just gradually changes to another color. But
Ah,
as you're doing it, it turns into stripes.
right, right.
So you get like 2 or 3 inch color stripes, and it's going through, and well, it's coming out really nicely. I'm pretty happy
Oh,
with
very
it.
good.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last few weeks. This
Oh,
last
wait, sorry. I forgot my toxic masculinity. Oh, what a kind of a wuss are you, having a useful skill that you can use to make gifts and stuff.
I don't know if you'll be able to see that. Probably there it is.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's the one.
self-striping. Huh.
Yeah, that's the one I'm currently doing, and then this is the temperature blanket.
Other
Uh,
way. Yeah. Oh, that's nice too.
yeah. So
Eh, well, kudos.
thank you.
You
Yep.
a wimp.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing. How have you been the last 3 weeks?
Um uh Finally locked down a script that I've been fighting against for a long time.
Yeah.
Um the One of the people that uh liked it fine, wanted just a few dialogue changes, which is understandable. They're his characters. Have not heard back yet from my publisher, so we'll see how that goes.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I was actually pretty happy with it. I was fighting it right up until the end. It was a slippery beast, and then yeah, but it all came together. So I'll be expecting another uh, Eisner nomination, maybe a Ringo nomination in 2023 for the 2022 issue.
Cool. Cool. I'll put some champagne on to chill. We'll be ready for the celebration.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll try. And hey, forget an Eisner nom. Maybe I'll actually come out to California after about 15 years.
I say, yeah, it's been a day or two since we've seen each other.
Yeah, yeah. I think actually I think it was 2008 that I came out there last.
I know.
Um, yeah, it's just um, it just the long distance travel was not really in my um, in my schedule didn't really allow. So, um, but yeah, I kept having people go like, "Why don't you ever come out here?" And it's like, well, A, it ain't cheap,
Right.
and B, I have to find somebody to care for the elder that I'm caring for, and C, it ain't cheap.
Yeah.
So if you're coming out to San Diego, especially, like if I come out to LA, I can probably crash, do crash on enough couches that I don't have to get a hotel.
Oh yeah.
If you go to San Diego, then yeah, then you get your 18 people in the room,
Hmm.
and
Been there, done that.
yeah,
I got a question for you. This is something you
yes,
brought up.
sir.
It's something I've never actually asked another writer about this. When you turn in a script, how often do you get like a ton of notes back compared to the rubber stamp type thing? Or what is your experience with scripts?
Uh, that's interesting because most of the time when I get back, I actually had one editor go like, "I gave you a couple suggestions because I didn't want to feel like I was just rubber stamping it, but if you don't want to make the changes, don't." Uh, I'm like, okay, well, that's it's like I feel I have to give you some. It was more like he felt he had to give me some feedback,
Hmm.
not necessarily necessary edits, but just like I just have to prove that I actually read through this thing that you work so hard on.
Yeah.
I've never had a really um like really massive changes. Actually there was one time, and uh it did the whole thing uh two times, and the whole thing did not go well. In the first case, I was a little irritated because it was something I had created, and I was doing this, and was the feedback was kind of like, well, I wanted it more like this from the editor. And I said, but you told me to do what I wanted to do. Like, yeah, but it could use a little more of this, a little more of this. And I'm like, I specifically ask you, do you think, there are any elements that really should be emphasized? I had one script that was completely rejected,
Mhm.
but that was because of some issues that came up, really nobody's fault, of communication. It just, it was like, before I went off and did the whole script, we'd been talking, and and one person thought it was going to go this way, and another person thought it was going to go that way, and instead it went this way. And so it was just, on the upside, still paid for it, so I can't complain about that. But I've never had like massive stuff. I've had some things where like editors do rewrites rather than asking me to do rewrites,
Mhm.
which I'm not a huge fan of. But you know, I'm also not, you know, uh, Alan Moore, so yeah, it's sometimes it's hard to get too precious. How about you? I mean, have you had a lot of,
See, that's the thing for me is
or are you not as good as me, Dan?
the very first story I ever did freelance.
Mm-hmm.
I got back just a ton of notes
Yeah.
and basically was asking me to completely change the big twist in the story.
Mm.
Now, I happen to really like the twist the guy recommended.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I kind
that's
of,
good.
yeah, so I went with it and it got published and I got paid and it was great. And that was probably the toughest editor I ever worked with.
Yeah.
It's a guy named Paul Benjamin. He was working for
Oh,
Human.
I know Paul.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
working for Human, and I go way back with.
That was metal Hurlant, right?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I actually knew Paul before he ever got there. We were in a Hardline Studios when we were first starting. We
Mm-hmm.
were working together on that, so I have a
Yeah.
long history of Paul. Um, and I got when I was at another company, I got some rather terse notes from an editor, basically pointing out a few things that he felt were rather sexist.
Mm.
And when I sent him the actual plot synopsis that I had been given to work from the owner of the company,
Right.
and went, well, this is the one you didn't like, and you didn't like that one, it all kind of went away. But other than that, I I don't really get notes,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's always kind of bothered me a little bit, because it's like I always think, well, I want to get better, so I want feedback
Right.
so I can improve, and it bugs me a little when I don't get notes back.
You know what I've started to feel about this though? It's sort of like, um, when you watch TV and somebody goes to a psychologist. They go to a therapist, and they go back and forth, usually not for, maybe it's like a few times over the course of a season. And by the end of the season, they're like, wow, we've had thrilling insights and now I feel much better. And when you go to a therapist in real life, you may occasionally get major insights. My therapist recently, within the last 6 months, I think, like came out of left field with something, and I was like, "Oh, ow, wow, that hit right home." Um, but you don't have breakthroughs, every 2 to 3 episodes
Right.
uh, in life. And two, in I think like in movies and stuff, we see, or movies, books, whatever, like the editor that gives you the, just the hyper insightful thing, and it's like, no, most of all, they're looking and going like, so yeah, there's no, it seems like you're setting something up here and there's no real payoff in that. You look and go like, oh, that's because I forgot to
Pay it
put
off.
in the one line, that would have paid it off.
Yeah.
I did have one where I was working on a licensed property and got the approval, wrote the script, which when I tried to turn it into our good pal Dan, who had commissioned the script from me, he was no longer at the publisher.
Mm.
And then I got a new guy, and I was like, and he liked it. And when the licensor came back and said, "Okay, could we change this bit at the end?" That would have, like, it kind of nullified big swaths of the story. Like, and he argued with the licensor, and I got to keep in the end bit that I thought was made the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice. It's nice when you run into that kind of stuff. I've had some great editors who, have, bumped me a little, but not, I don't get copious notes.
Yeah.
Other than like, you realize there's no B story here. And I'm like, it's a 22-page one shot. You're right. There's no B story, because where am I supposed to put it, really? It's
That's where
good.
you spend in the background. You have a single bee
Yeah,
on the page, just over and over, doing things in the background. That's your B story.
that's the B story.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like they had the Batman month at DC one time, where in Birds of Prey there was just a thing, like the story was going on, and down in this valley by a river, I think Batman was fighting a bear. Yeah, if you weren't looking for it, you didn't see it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I There was one licensed property I worked on that truly surprised me because this was the Honor Harrington series.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know you worked on that. Nice.
Yeah. It was over at Top Cow. They did an adaptation of the first book on Battle Station, and then we did an original story. And Matt Hawkins, they had come to Matt and asked him to do the book specifically,
Yeah.
but he brought me in for the second one because he just was too busy. And he had an idea of the story he wanted to do, but he gave me just the real kind of rough thing. And I kind of filled in the blanks. And there was a couple characters that have been in all have been the crew members in the novel. And I took one of them and basically gave him his backstory. Just made him like, an ex-street kid who knew how to hack and all this other stuff. And I thought, this is never going to fly.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's an actual backstory for this character, but I don't know what it is. And I kind of need this, so I'm putting it together. And I figured they'll come back and go, no, this is what the guy is, and I can try to make it from there. Nothing. Just got approved. I mean, not even any little tweaks or changes at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just stunned by that. It's like, okay, kind of weird.
I did that with the Renee Montoya episode or issue of Gotham Girls.
Yeah.
I was like, well, okay, it's the animated series, not the main DCU. And so I was like, I don't know if they've ever established anything. And I tried to do some research and wasn't really finding some. So I did this whole backstory for her. And I was waiting for them to go like, well, this doesn't match up with what we've done before. But yeah, nothing about that. It just and I don't think that my editor just assumed I knew what I was doing. Um that I knew whatever the mythology was. Uh so she must have realized that this was new stuff. But it flew, and it seemed to go over well. So yeah, but it's weird when you're like, well, this obviously is going to get corrected, and second draft, here I come.
Mm-hmm. And since we're both currently working writers, freelance writers, editors are amazing. We love our editors.
We do. They bring out that which is, they illuminate that which is best in the work.
They hone the diamond to shine. Yes.
Yes. They hone it, they polish it. It's yeah. If it wasn't for editors, where would we be?
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the weird thing is I have been very happy with most of my editors, even the ones that think I wasn't.
And I've been in the editor seat too, which is kind of weird for me. But yeah.
Yeah.
I was an editor for a while for Zenoscope, and that was interesting. So nothing, huh?
I don't talk about Zenoscope.
Okay.
They just irritate the heck out of me for one particular reason, and I, other than occasionally saying that, I try not to talk about them, because there's probably a certain amount of my rage is misplaced. But
Alrighty.
But did they pay you?
What?
Did you got paid?
Yes.
So that's all that matters.
I have worked with quite a few publishers who have less than stellar reputations. And I want to say that I have been paid by everybody. Nobody owes me any money.
Wow, that's nice.
Yep.
So I almost said, so you haven't worked for fill in the blank.
No, I probably have.
Well, the particular publisher I'm talking about has changed their name so often that it's hard to know, which version you worked on.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, I know that there's some, but no, I've had good relationship with most of the publishers, just about all the publishers I've worked with, and still send birthday wishes and stuff like that, and on good terms with everybody. So,
yep,
which is important to business, But
yes, right, and I try to restrain my natural obnoxious complaining.
All right, let's switch a little, get back into the pop culture. Have you been following the latest trailers for some of the Marvel stuff? Like, have you seen the Miss Marvel trailer?
I saw them as Marvel. It looks like good fun. That they're probably going to be dealing with the same kind of cultural issues that cultural and age issues that they dealt with in the comics. I'm thoroughly confused about her powers, which do not seem to be the powers from the
right
from the comic. And it looks like she's got quantum bands, nega bands, something like that. I suppose actually quantum bands would make sense because Quasar used to make like solid light
Energy.
objects.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, but it looks fun. The actress seems to be really good, doing what she's doing. So I'm interested to see it. It's now. Did you see the? Apparently, they just released well, not apparently. I watched it, so they released a new Moon Knight. Looks like a teaser. Yeah.
We'll get to that. Let's finish up with Miss Marvel.
Okay. Yeah. How did you feel on the?
I'm not confused by the powers for a simple reason. Scott Buck sucks.
Okay.
Scott Buck is the writer showrunner of the first season of Iron Fist, the last couple at least the last season of Dexter, and not the more recent one, but and the one season of the Inhumans.
Ah, and he's working on Ms. Marvel.
No,
Oh,
because Miss
oh,
Marvel.
you think that they're avoiding the Inhuman aspect, but you could have had the same. I assumed it was something to do with budgetary reasons.
No. I think there's a couple of reasons. These are my reasons.
Yep.
Number one, they're trying to avoid the Inhumans because the show blew.
Sure, and you don't have to go with. I was just going to say you don't have to go with Inhumans to have the same powers.
Right, but the other thing they could do is mutants, and they haven't brought mutants in yet.
Sure.
So, but I think that now there's been rumors that they may use Anson Mount as Black Bolt as part of the Illuminati in Doctor Strange, which would be interesting. But so I think they are staying away from the Inhumans for now until they can do an actual reboot of it. They don't want to just she's an Inhuman or she's a mutant. I think they want a grander introduction for those things, kind of like the Eternals. Number two is I think they wanted to stay away from her abilities being so close to Mr. Fantastic's.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. The Fantastic Four coming. And then number three, I think they purposely want to tie her closer into the Miss Marvel family.
The Marvel,
Captain like Monica Rambeau. So that when they appear in the Marvels, which they're all going to appear in, the quantum bands and the nega bands are basically the same thing. They believe the nega bands is actually a quantum band given to a member of the Kree ancient times, like centuries before, and has been passed along that line. So they think that, basically in the Marvel
don't have big gems on them.
It was an early one. So and it would make sense for it to be the nega bands because that so specifically ties to Captain Marvel.
Right.
Where the quantum bands and a lot of the time what happens in these comics is that one writer comes in, does something, and doesn't realize there's an artifact or something else they could have used.
Yes, although with the nega bands and the quantum bands, we're talking about Mark Grunwald. He knew everything.
Yes.
So sure. I think he was specifically trying to, keep because he
Grunwald write the Captain Marvel series when he had the nega bands?
No, I not that Starlin was writing it. Who the heck took over after Starlin left? Because I was actually reading it at the time. I know Al Milgram was working on it. For a long time. Boy, that's going to aggravate the hell out of me. If only I had a machine. Let's see here. crap. But wow, that doesn't work at all. Anyway, and also they're probably trying to keep away too, because it's like the Skrulls also have shape-shifting powers, and
Yeah.
so
So I think what they're trying to do is give her something unique, and also I get the feeling that it's going to kind of go in kind of a Green Lantern direction, where there's almost going to be like a core, and there's also talk about Nova appearing in the Marvels. So
yeah, the Carol Corps.
yeah, the Carol Core. There you go. So,
Actually, I can't believe I did not remember this. Steve Englehart was writing.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of my absolute favorite comic writers of all time. And I'm like, I wonder who it was.
I did a panel with Steve once. It was just he and I.
Yeah.
This was at a convention in San Jose, a tiny little convention. And somebody asked about writing and which was more important, characters or situations? And he and I disagreed.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm like, well, I always write it from characters, and then you drop them in the situation, you let them kind of act it out, and you kind of let the characters grow into the situation and do what they're going to do, and that's how you keep good characters. And he was like, no, you got a situation you want to tell, you put them in it, you write it, and that's it. They do what you tell them to do. And we're having this argument in a panel.
Yeah.
It's like, I grew up reading Steve Englehart. I'm happy just to meet the guy, and now I'm arguing with him.
I knew him already, but I had something like that at dinner with Marv Wolfman one time. And I'm like, shut up, Paul. In my back of my head as I'm going, no, let me explain why you're wrong. Yeah. Like, and I was just like, oh my God, stop.
Yeah.
But I was right. So, but yeah,
Marv Wolfman doesn't know what he's up. Jesus.
no, he knew something, but I was not. It's not like I was lecturing on New Teen Titans.
Yeah.
Put it that way. I mean, I like no. Dick Grayson's reason for becoming Nightwing are nothing like what you just said.
Yeah. Really, Cyborg in shorts? Why would you do that?
But yeah, that is always a really surreal moment when you're like, I deeply respect you, but I don't
respectfully
agree.
disagree.
Yeah. To some degree, I mean, you can take about anybody and put them into a I've heard people say that, you can't, if you could take Daredevil and put him into this Batman story, then then it's not a Daredevil story. And I'm kind of like, close enough. The characters are going to react to the situation differently.
Right.
So what I'm saying is one I feel one informs the other, but I do kind of get tired of the not I don't think you're doing this, but the people who want to mysticize the writing process. Oh, the characters talk to me, and I'm like, okay, I get that on a practical thing where you've got it in your head strongly enough that you get, it feels like that's what's going on. But no, ultimately, they're not telling you what to do, no matter what Robert E. Howard said about Conan.
I look at it this way. I know my brother very well.
Yeah.
And if my brother came home, opened the door, and there was a taxidermy eagle sitting on the counter for no apparent reason, I have some pretty good ideas of how he'd react to it.
Sure.
Because I know him.
Right.
Now, that's not saying that, he's informing the scene. It's that I know how he's going to act. So when I write a character, I like to get to know them that well in my head so that when I put them in the scene, I'm going to have a good idea how they're going to react. It's not them speaking and saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this," not that, but their character, how they act normally, what their character is. You've got to be true to that character.
Sure,
So,
unless you're doing a Batman film.
so yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't read much of Miss Marvel. She's not a character that's absolutely interested me. I'm not a fan of legacy characters,
Mm-hmm.
and passing their names on and stuff. And I think that the industry is inundated with that right now. We're not getting new characters. We're getting these derivations of, it's like everybody loves Miles Morales. Great. Give him his own character name. He doesn't need to be Spider-Man. He's a great character. He's a great suit. Give him his own name. It's confusing.
Yeah, well, I get that. I get that. Although, and actually even the 80s, I think it was late 80s, early 90s, where they were doing the, there was Captain America and the Captain, there was Thor and Thunderstrike, there was Iron Man and War Machine. It was it seemed like everybody was getting a doppelganger.
Yeah.
And but even those, because for a while at Marvel, wasn't there also a point? Well, the two Hulks came later, the Red Hulk, Green Hulk thing, but yeah, it was just like that seemed to be the go-to. And what was my point that I was trying to bring in here? But even with most of them, they did eventually give them, even if they started off using the same name, they ended up giving them a distinct name.
And DC's the worst. How many Flashes do we need? Now, I get Green Lantern's a core and it's a title, so they can all be like cops who are Green Lanterns.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of excuse that, but we don't need 3 Flashes, 2 Batmans, 6 Robins,
and a partridge in a pear tree. I agree. I like the days when Jason Todd was dead and Tim Drake was Robin and Dick Grayson was Nightwing, and that was enough.
Yeah. And I'm not a fan of Damian Wayne at all, but
I don't know who that is.
Having watched the trailer for Miss Marvel, I will say I'm a lot more interested in the show having seen the trailer.
Yeah.
It looks interesting to me, where it did up until it was probably the one I was least interested in. So
I think the actress really pulled off that fangirl aspect. It seems like it's going to have a good supporting cast. Yeah.
By the way, does it look like she only gets one bracelet?
Well, it does, and in the comics, she only has one bracelet. So I don't know what's going on with that. Hopefully, we'll learn more about it in the show itself. But yeah. But yes, in the comics, her costume only has one bracelet, and the other is wrist is bare. Well, not bare. She's got her costume covers it, but she doesn't have a.
All right, so let's move on to Moon Knight. They've been dropping a few different trailers, little pictures. We got a scene where he's being chased by Khonshu. We now know that the voice of Khonshu is going to be F. Murray Abraham.
Yeah.
Yeah. The latest trailer, now he's talking to his reflection, and the reflection is Mark Spector, Stephen Grant. There was a couple lines from the trailer that stood out to me, like, "This is the best, worst day of my life."
Yeah.
which I thought was a great line.
Yeah.
Or we or what was it? We help people and find justice or something. It's
Yeah.
like interesting. So every time I see something new from the show, it seems like it changes what I expect.
Well, even the scene in the mirror, the new trailer gives a different context to it than the other one, the previous one. I felt so. Yeah, I'm hoping. Well, it's one of those things. I like Moon Knight a lot. Although interestingly, I've not read a ton of the Moon Knight comics because there have been so many iterations that it's sort of like I read the first 6 and then go, all right, it's either
Yeah.
bogging down in the past stuff or it just hasn't each time it just keep like something will bump me out of it. And
Yeah.
but yeah, this looks like it'll be interesting, and I'm curious to see um like there it does seem like right now that Stephen Grant is the core and the other people are but I could also see a thing where um Mark Spector is like in the comics is the original and Stephen was like a defense mechanism for him.
That's the way I think it's going to be.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to seem the other way to start, but I think that we're going to find out that he basically retreated into Stephen
Well,
Grant.
I think what they've done is they've wanted to give us a character we can relate to, and an ex-mercenary who works for an Egyptian god is kind of a rough character to associate with, where a mild-mannered guy that works in a museum who's having problems sleeping and weird visions, you can get sympathetic towards. So I think I get it from a writer's point of view that it's easier to get the reader invested from that point of view, you know?
Well, you got to remember, I come from Michigan, and we've got the former Blackwater is run out of Michigan. So we're used to mercenaries around here. So I just was like right on that. Oh, I'm sorry, private military contractors, because you're not allowed to have the U.S. does not approve of mercenaries. So instead, we have private military contractors.
Now, who we haven't seen yet in the trailers are Marlene and Frenchie.
There was a woman in this trailer who had a line but didn't really. Yeah,
that's Layla, and she's the one that also calls him and says, "Mark, what's wrong with you? Why you call me Mark? Why do I sound like Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins?"
What's going to be really embarrassing is at some point they'll be like an interview. It's like, oh, here's my voice coach, and the guy will be, oh, hello, and he sound exactly like him, and he'll be like from like some 3 square block area in London where everybody talks like exactly like that. We're gonna be like, oh,
it's kind of like with Knives Out when Daniel Craig came out with that ridiculous voice, and then he goes, "Oh, but I was doing this guy." And you look him up on YouTube, and you find all these videos as he's a famous historian, and he sounds spot on.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, so he wasn't doing Foghorn Leghorn. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's actually the same thing with everybody gave Christopher Lambert a hard time about his Scottish accent in Highlander. And he literally worked with a voice coach to come up with an accent that sounded like it was snippets of different places. Meanwhile, the Egyptian by way of Spain is like, I am Juan Villalobo Ramirez. The Spaniard.
I just wrapped up the final Fridays, or the Friday comedies. It kind of hurts a little,
Yeah. Now, how
It's been
far back did you do Darby O'Gill?
when it debuted. So I started
Oh, you were
these
going
chronologically.
chronologically.
Yeah,
Because that would have been a good one. Finish up on right near St. Patrick's Day for
yeah, no,
Darby.
no. He passed, and I had been doing just random photos of
Yeah,
both him and Michael Caine on Mondays, and it was just because so many people responded to them, it just became kind of a thing.
yeah,
And then he passed, and I thought I should do something a little more than just random photos. So I started doing his, and also I found this super old photo of him in Macbeth, I think it was. So, and
mm,
I just started doing it going forward, and they've become this thing now. The experience, the network I work on during the week,
yep,
has me repost them on their site, Facebook page.
yeah, yeah.
So I am going to debut a new person this Friday. So there'll be a new Your Friday or Your Friday blank, and they will debut on this Friday. So hopefully they will get the same reaction and joy. There's a lot of joy from these I get. People going, "Oh my God, I love that movie," or "Oh, that was so bad. I
Yeah.
remember it." And, you
Well, you
know,
get a lot of that with Mike O'Kane because
I do.
he's a working actor. That you
Yeah,
like. He's gotten lots of praise and award nominations and stuff,
yeah.
and he's still like, this will go between when and when. Okay, is my schedule clear?
hmm There's a movie he did where he did it just because he wanted to work with Roger Moore, who was one of his best friends. He did a Steven Seagal movie.
Oh, I know that one. I,
Yes.
I because Seagal trained in Aikido and I studied Aikido. I watched Steven Seagal movies for a while, and then when I got to the point where I was like, okay, this is not at all, representing Aikido.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Even though he still does like Aikido demonstrations. But his movies, it's like, well, what was Hard to Kill was one of the first ones. It's like doing the punching the board with the rope wrapped around it.
Yeah.
Nope. Um, so once he just started throwing in everything, I was like, yeah, I'm done. But I can't remember what Fire Down Below was it
No, it was in On Deadly Ground.
on Deadly Ground.
Yeah.
Um,
And what's
yeah,
funny is,
and
I understand, he actually put in this big speech in the script,
yeah,
basically about conservation and what was
hmm
being done to the land. And also, he filmed a 40-minute thing that he was going to tack onto the end about conservation and saving the planet. So he was way ahead on the whole uh, climate change thing. But the
yeah,
studio cut all that out.
yeah. Well, it'd
And they
be
only,
kind of weird for an action movie.
yeah. He also wrote, produced, and directed it. And he got to do that because he promised he would do Under Siege 2, which had been Under Siege 1 had been a big hit.
Yeah, Under Siege 2, Under Siegier.
Yes, Under Siege on a Train.
Yes,
Ever
and
tell you
and
the
they
story of the premiere of that?
huh?
I went to the premiere of Under Siege 2,
Really?
so just a few feet away from him, and was armed at the time.
Were you working security?
No, I was there with a woman that I was dating who was a cop and
Ah,
who wore a very tight dress and didn't want to take her clutch, but still wanted her gun. So
so you were a very big holster.
I was a very big holster. I had both her gun and her badge. And I stood 3 feet away from one of the worst actors in history, and I was armed. I could have ended that. There would
Okay, you have to tell me after we finish. If you don't want to share it publicly, I want to hear after who one of the worst actors in history was.
no, talking about Seagal.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Um,
And I could have prevented it. You went away, Paul.
I'm still here from my side.
There you go. You
Can
just
you hear
became
me?
a black queen with a swirl.
Yeah, it's weird because it I think happens to both of us from time to time,
Mm.
but I think for the people watching, we're usually still there.
Yeah. All
Weird.
right. Back to
Yes, you would have gotten rid of Vladimir Putin's best friend.
yes, yes. So I'm looking forward to Moon Knight a lot, but yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it's not too different because there's still
But
stuff about Moon Knight I love. I started reading it. They did a reprint. My first experience with Moon Knight, they reprinted the run from the Hulk magazine that
mhm,
Doug Munch and Bill Sienkiewicz did.
yeah,
And reprinted in these three Baxter paper bound,
yeah,
prestige format sets, and I got those and just loved it and been a fan ever since. And then they did that reboot with him with all the Egyptian stuff added.
the Fist
Yeah,
of Khonshu.
yeah. So yeah, I've been a big Moon Knight fan, and I'm loving that they're bringing him back. And I'm also loving all the rumors about there being a fourth season of Daredevil coming. So
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
know how true that's going to be, but from what I understand, there's actually a production company now called Blind Faith Production, and that according to there's a site that lists all the productions going into basically starting work this year, and they're one of them. And they're saying, well,
mm,
this is a reboot of Daredevil. I'm wondering if that's what it is, or if it'll be the Echo series as
ah,
part of the Daredevil thing, and then they'll do more Daredevil after.
yeah.
So we shall see.
It's interesting to me how many people are like, oh, aren't you getting sick of this, or isn't burnout, isn't there burnout? And I'm like, I look, if I like, I've been watching Star Trek Discovery and just started Lower Decks, um, and I'm watching them, and uh, they're very different. They still both feel like Star Trek to me. I'm enjoying them. I don't care whether, oh, there's too much. It's sort of like with Star Wars. People like, isn't there going to be too much Star Wars? I'm like, not for the people who like Star Wars.
Yeah, which seems
So
to be a
like,
lot of people.
hmm?
Says it seems like it's a lot of people too.
Yeah, yeah.
But the shows
I
are very different, you know? I mean,
yeah,
Moon Knight and Miss Marvel are very different shows.
yeah,
Yeah. But then again, we live in a world that there was 23 seasons of Law and Order, and now it's back.
yeah. I think it was 22 season. This is 23rd, but
Oh,
they were on the cusp. This is what gets me. When they were canceled, the next season would have made them the longest running live action drama after Gunsmoke. And they just went, yeah, we'll just do the other ones.
yeah.
Like, I, 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 I suppose there were probably reasons, but it seemed crazy at the
Yeah.
time. And I'm watching fewer, and this is going to win friends and influence people. I'm watching fewer cop shows lately. I just, uh, I just a lot of them I don't feel comfortable watching because
Hmm.
some of them feel like recruitment ads. But like I had to pick that one up again.
Yeah.
I just I
Oh, Sam Waterston.
yeah, yeah,
I'll watch anything that Sam Waterston's in.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
saw him on Stephen Colbert.
mm-hmm,
Went on, and he doesn't normally do interviews.
yeah. I think I've seen twice that interviews twice, and they were both on Colbert.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he is looking his age.
yeah. Well, he's one of those people that even when he started on Law and Order, he looked a little older than he was, I think.
Yeah.
So, you keep going on, and you're like, how is Sam Waterston not getting any older? And it's like, because you look sort of like Abe Vigoda.
Oh my God, yeah. Abe
Yeah,
Vigoda
like,
looked 70 in the 70s.
yes. And where it was like, that's why people kept going like, well, it can't be long now, because as long as we had been alive, he had
Mhm.
looked like he was making his way. But yeah, but he's a great actor. I love his work, and so, but yeah, he has start well, like all his hair is all white now, as opposed
Yeah.
to, used to be salt and pepper, or pepper and salt. Now it's salt with the little pepper. But yeah, that's it is. But anyway, yes, and really, it's like there's three Law and Orders that went for over 10, all of them, over 10, 15 years.
Oh yeah.
I think the SVU is still going, and Criminal Intent, went long enough that it written by Punisher creator Jerry Conway, show run by
Mm-hmm.
him. Um,
Law and Order Criminal Intent, starring Kingpin and the Grandmaster.
yes. They need to have, oh shoot, what's her name? Um, the Vincent D'Onofrio sidekick, well, not sidekick, partner,
Yeah,
sorry,
I know you're
in
talking.
that. And I've once again forgotten her name. I keep forgetting people's names.
It's a sign of getting
Uh,
old.
what? Couldn't hear you. So, anyway, they need to get her um, in a Marvel.
Yeah. So, all right. One last thing we should probably bring up, and that is the recent passing of William Hurt.
Yeah.
Such an amazing actor. I mean, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Body Heat, Children of the Lesser God, just down the line, just so good. And to see him show up in the MCU later in his career, Thunderbolt Ross in the Incredible Hulk movie comes back in Civil War, in Black Widow, he's popping up occasionally. But yeah, I mean, just was kind of just blown away when he passed because there's some people you go, oh yeah, well, like, if having just seen Black Widow, I just rewatched it recently.
Mm.
You see how frail he looks in it,
Mm.
and they
I
talk
guess I
about,
didn't notice.
yeah,
Which is always weird.
she even talks about how he wasn't looking good, and that maybe he had because they talk about him having a stroke in Civil War, and then they mentioned it something like that again. So I wonder if they were kind of setting it up, knowing that he probably wasn't, because I hear it was cancer.
Yeah. I don't think he was very secretive about his cancer, not like Chiwetel, not sorry, Chadwick
Chadwick
Boseman.
Boseman. Yeah,
I don't know why Mordo jumped in my head, but Chadwick Boseman, was very secretive. I still stuns me that he managed. And yeah, you think 71 isn't that old these days.
yeah,
Um, medical advancements, and of course we always think of people who are well off having much better healthcare outcomes because
yep,
they've got the access to the best. But yeah, and I will never forget broadcast news.
yes.
That
Oh
was
yeah,
just that was one of my favorites. Although I don't watch much in the way of workplace dramedies anymore. They used to be like, I'd go and see that kind of thing at the theater, and now I'm like, has it moved on to streaming yet? If it doesn't need a giant screen,
yeah.
not usually going to see it in the theater.
That's about where I am too. You know, It's like, okay, I'm going to go see the big murder mysteries because I'm hooked on them.
Yeah.
Going to go see the superhero movies. Not maybe big sci-fi stuff. Other than that,
Yeah.
I have to wait for it at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only reason I go for the big murder mysteries is I want to see it before it gets ruined.
Well,
I'm not,
yeah, there's although having seen as much Agatha Christie as you have, how often are they going to get ruined these days?
true. But yeah, I'm kind of itching to write my own detective story. That's what's coming out of it. Like, how can I do it with a twist? How can I do something different?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, just don't do what they used to do um in the 70s and yeah, mostly I think a lot of it was maybe the 60s and 70s, early 80s, but for a while the um like they were doing where you had to the protagonist had to have a specific handicap. It's, oh, here's the blind detective. Oh, here's the um little person detective. Oh, here's the guy who lost, a leg in Korea or uh,
irons.
Vietnam, or it was and it was just like, oh my god, quit maiming people. I mean, it's one thing to go like, oh, I have an idea for this character, but when you're like, well, I'm coming up with this new mystery, so what can I do? You know,
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's pretty standard when you create a detective. If they're so intelligent, then your readers aren't going to be able to identify with them.
yeah,
So you usually either give them a sidekick, like Watson, Hastings, Archie Goodwin, those type of characters,
Mug, Lug.
or
I'm sorry, Lug, Magner. I can. Peter Campion's sidekick was named Lug.
or they give him a flaw. With
Yeah,
Sherlock Holmes, they gave him the drug thing where he couldn't handle being bored. Being bored is a bad thing for a detective. Poirot has a problem with that too, but they made Poirot quirky and never the romance, no romance or anything like that. Even
yeah.
more recently, like Monk, they made him
Oh, yeah,
OCD.
yeah,
You know, so you've got
uh,
to give them this fallacy. This also arrogance is another thing they love to give them.
yeah.
I mean Nero Wolfe. Did you ever watch the A&E Nero Wolfe with Timothy?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, me too. I love the rotating cast. How they kept.
Yes,
Yeah, I
yeah,
I will sit down and rewatch those probably once a year, just all of them.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, in Columbo, the whole disarming, disheveled,
yep,
everybody thinks he's a goof, kind of like,
yeah,
oh, I don't take him, they don't take him seriously.
yep,
Like,
yeah. I think if I ever got a chance to write a comic that just kind of do I would love to do the question in an actual murder mystery setup
mm,
to actually
stay
do it.
away. I get the question first.
I would love to do an action. So to me, one of my favorite series is always going to be Hush, because it was a mystery to me. It was like a murder mystery. So, and that's what I've always wanted to do is a long form murder mystery with a superhero in the lead. But
Yeah,
the question would be perfect for that.
yeah,
You
yeah,
could do it with Batman, but it's kind of been done. I don't know
yeah,
about, the long Halloween, stuff like that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's the type of thing. Or one of the Marvel characters. I'd love to do something like that.
yeah.
So, all right, we are at the end of the show.
That went
Thank
quick.
I know. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been a lot of fun. We are back. We will be covering Moon Knight when it comes out at the 30th. We will be back next week. I am going to try to get over to see Batman this week. If I do, then we will talk about it on Sunday, but I will go see it soon.
Yeah.
Uh,
Otherwise, you'll be stuck hearing me talking about new Star Trek stuff.
yes. And Paul's going to try to watch the John Malkovich Poirot on Prime, the ABC Murders.
That's if Yes, if we're not back, it's because I've torn my eyes out.
Yes. And occasionally say a French word just so you feel appropriate. C'est pas?
Merde.
Oh, mon ami, we are done for the night.